criminals responsible for last night's atrocity on Aldani think they've taken the Empire by surprise. We know better.
So, while Luthen and his team did get a major win on Aldani and finally made the statement they wanted to make, it's not without consequence, because as rebel activity across the galaxy grows and gets bolder, who gets empowered by that but the good folks over at the ISB, which is basically the space Gestapo. No, our Imperial perspective in this show is not in the high command with characters like Grand Moff Tarkin or even Vader or the Emperor. It's solely with these mid-level supervisors and people who desperately seek to climb the ranks of the Empire, which is a choice that I really adore. For the sake of big, action-packed, epic sci-fi movies like the original trilogy, it makes sense to have characters like Tarkin or Vader or the Emperor take center stage on the bad guy team, because the only real purpose they need to serve is essentially just to be evil. There are these ultimate obstacles for our heroes to overcome, and they don't really need to be anything beyond that. You don't need to know a lick about the Emperor's backstory or motivations for him to be a good character, because he's not meant to be humanized. You're not supposed to relate to this evil dried up prune, and he doesn't need you to either. This man is more than happy just laughing to himself as he blows up planets. But in Andor, similar to what they did with Krennic in Rogue One, they wisely go a few rungs down on the ladder and focus on these sort of high, mid-level managers, which are the people actually carrying out much of the day-to-day evil of the Empire.
We are healthcare providers. We treat sickness. We identify symptoms. We locate germs, whether they arise from within or have come from the outside.
I don't expect anyone that is watching this video to have seen the 2007 movie Michael Clayton, but I want to bring it up here because the ISB perspective in this show very much reminded me of this movie. You see, in that movie, you follow George Clooney's character, who's this guy that works as a fixer for this very high-end law firm. His job is to go around tying up loose ends, getting people in line, and above all else, protecting the firm's clients from any and all consequences. He basically does all the dirty work that the company requires, but the very nature of that work is at best simply immoral and at worst totally evil. I mean, the job he's on in the movie is making sure his firm's client, this massive chemical company, gets off the hook for knowingly poisoning thousands of crops with a dangerous weed killer that led to people dying. This is the kind of work he does every day of his life, and it warps him into this deeply cynical drone that for his own mental stability refuses to confront the reality of what he does for a living. He always looks measured and put together, but you can see the pain in his eyes and the humanity being held back within him. Similarly, Tilda Swinton's character is also in a similar position within the company, where she is carrying out literal assassinations among other evil acts just to keep people quiet, but unlike Clooney, her eyes show only emptiness and fear. She exists for the sole reason of climbing the corporate ladder, and is so far beyond even Clooney where she doesn't even have to drown out the humanity within her. It's just not there anymore, if it ever even was. To her, the people she's dealing with are just numbers on a spreadsheet, and the fear in her eyes is just the fear of losing the case and not climbing the ranks further. There's obviously a lot more going on in the movie, but what it's really about at its core is about the evil of the system and the power structure. There really is no main central villain in it. You don't see the big bad CEO or the board sitting on their thrones laughing at their evil acts. The evil of this system is all shown through the lens of these people lower on the food chain that work to keep the machine going, never much considering anything else, and how they somehow manage to live with themselves. On an individual scale, none of them really matter all that much to the system, because if you remove them from it, another person just like them will take their place. It's a system that inherently attracts the worst and most unempathetic, soulless parts of humanity.
You want a carry permit? You want a heads up on an insider trading subpoena? I sold out Arthur for 80 grand and a 3-year contract, and you're gonna kill me?
There's this great quote that's attributed to C.S. Lewis, which not sure if he actually said it or not. I mean, you know how the internet is, but regardless, it fits perfectly here. I live in the managerial age, in the world of admin. The greatest evil is not now done in these sordid dens of crime that Dickens loved to paint. It is not done even in concentration camps and labor camps. In those we see its final result, but it is conceived and ordered, moved, seconded, carried, and minuted in clean, carpeted, warmed, well-lit offices by quiet men with white collars and cut fingernails and smooth-shaven cheeks who do not need to raise their voices. Hence, naturally enough, my symbol for hell is something like the bureaucracy of a police state or the office of a thoroughly nasty business concern. I know I'm on quite the tangent here, but I bring all this up because this is exactly how the ISB is portrayed in this show. It is this collection of calm, uncaring managers who fight amongst themselves and claw and scratch to climb the ranks to really no end, and yet they sit in their boardroom and talk about death and these horrifying atrocities as if it was any other day at the office. Also, who wrote and directed Michael Clayton? You guessed it, Tony Gilroy. It all leads back to the same point. The true evil the rebellion is fighting against is conceived and carried out by these people, and seeing them in action, in a way, justifies the lengths Luthen goes to fight them. The cold brutality on both sides of this conflict is something that makes this show so realistic, because this is how these things work in real life. It's not a place for heroes or even traditional villains for that matter. The evil is ingrained into the very system itself. Swap out a part or two and just keeps on chugging. It's why Luthen's plans are so long-term. There's not much value in small victories when you're up against a machine like this. It's got to be all or nothing.
Wouldn't you rather give it all at once to something real than carve off useless pieces till there's nothing left?
And on a much more simple level, the scenes in the ISB offices are some of my favorites in the whole show. The constant office bickering for who gets to be teacher's pet that day, how petty everyone is, how they air out all their dirty laundry publicly in their meetings, how they're almost encouraged to step on their colleagues to get ahead. It's this totally cutthroat culture dressed in a clean, otherwise normal-looking office. But it does undeniably breed extremely cunning individuals like Ramiro, who catches on to Luthen and his network, and you get this wonderful cat and mouse game between them through the show's whole run. Luthen is essentially perfect in how he goes about his business and keeps his cover, but slowly over the course of the series, she is able to put more and more pieces together, and it makes for this wonderfully compelling narrative. Both sides are extremely competent and make very few mistakes. Dedra is also just such a fun character to watch, especially the more the show goes on. She is so consumed with her career and such a devoted soldier in the Empire, and not in the least bit vulnerable, but is still a very human character at the same time. When you see her crack and the humanity come out of her, it puts into perspective just how unnatural the Empire system is and what it requires out of those who work in it. In order to survive, you need to kill the human part of yourself. We find out later that she was raised from early childhood in an Imperial bloc, and it makes perfect sense because that's the only way for someone like her to exist. The Empire literally spent years training the humanity out of her, but that's also what the show is constantly telling us the weakness of the Empire is. It's this extremely loose house of cards built on fear that takes a tremendous amount of effort and maintenance, and nothing illustrates that better than where Cassian ends up next. So after Cassian takes his cut of the heist, he runs off to Space Miami and lives a leisurely life away from all troubles. Despite all he's seen, he's still not made into a rebel yet. The fear of the Empire is still very much at the front of his mind, but as a result of that fear and a bit of bad luck, he finds himself arrested and thrown into prison for essentially nothing, and this begins what is arguably the peak of the entire series, Narkina 5. When I first saw Season 1 back when it came out in 22, I was very much on board by this point, but once I saw this arc, that is when I had the first thought of, oh shit, this might be the best Star Wars thing I've ever seen. I mean, the way this arc unfolds is just flawless because on the surface, it's a pretty simple prison break story, which is a thing we've seen 1,000 times across all kinds of different media. Guy goes to jail, guy rallies the inmates and overcomes the odds and oppression and gets out. But it's the way the writers weave the shadow of the Empire into how the prison functions that pushes it over the top for me.
Don't ever look at the number. Double, triple, it doesn't matter. Hey! You're in till they don't want you anymore. Enough! Get straight with that.
Right from the jump when Cassian first arrives there, it doesn't feel like a typical prison. The space is fairly open, there's not a lot of guards, the guards you do see are not really armed outside of like batons, it's clean, it just seems off. You don't understand how this prison possibly functions until you realize that it's all through fear. The prisoners are unguarded and unsupervised, they're not separated from each other, they are free to communicate, they get as much food as they want. It's all fairly lax in a certain way, and the reason why is because at any moment, should they need to, the guards can simply snap their fingers and fry every inmate via an electrified floor. So, because of this, they don't need a guard presence at all or the inmates to be separated or not talk to each other. All they need is that fear and a little bit of hope in the form of displaying their days left by their bunks, and everyone just stays in line. Better yet, they appoint certain inmates as like de facto supervisors of their day-to-day tasks to offload any possible resentment from the guards onto their own fellow inmates. It's genius because it's hard to build up a revolution from within when the only people you see are each other and there's tears among the prisoners.
My name is Kino Loy. I'm the 5-2D unit manager. The 49 men in this room answer to me.
The whole system works as this great microcosm of how the Empire runs all their operations, because yes, they have the means to achieve their goals through sheer force, but why bother with all that when you can accomplish the exact same thing with fear and hope? Oppression isn't just about power, it's about control, and that control gets stronger when you're inside the minds of the people. Thing is though, like I mentioned earlier, that facade takes a tremendous amount of effort, and once it comes crashing down, it's very hard to put back together, and that is what we see play out. At first, Cassian is trying to get support to mount an escape, but aside from a few inmates here and there, he doesn't really make a lot of progress. The carrot the Empire has dangling in front of them in the form of their sentences is keeping them from trying anything. People like Andy Serkis, who have less than a year left, have no interest in ruining their chances for release, and why would they? Sure, they're in a bad place, but it could be worse, and it's bound to end eventually. At least that's what they think. It all changes though when word gets around that an inmate got recycled back into the prison after his sentence was up, revealing that they are never getting out of here, and if they do, it's only to go to a different facility. So instantly, even though the power is still very much in the hands of the Empire, the control they had over the inmates is gone. Once hope is removed from the equation and fear means nothing since they will likely die either way, Cassian is finally able to rally them to escape, and what follows is one of the very best sequences in the entire show. You get this inspirational moment where the prisoners take control of the facility and you realize just how much they've outnumbered the guards this whole time and how thin their hold over them was. Andy Serkis gives this great emotional monologue, and you remember that these are all just regular ass people. Random, insignificant, ordinary people coming together to do the impossible.
There is one way out. Right now. The building is ours.
It's the entire story of the rebellion on a small scale played out in this one single arc. And that humanity is one of the best parts of the whole show. Not only is it about regular people, but they actually act like people too. Characters make irrational choices based on emotion and jealousy. They're attracted to each other and flirt and have relationships and actually show physical affection towards one another. They bicker and fight and have poorly functioning relationships. They talk over each other. They act like actual people. None of this is required for the basics of the show to work, but it's scenes and monologues like this, or simple moments like this, or this, that makes you attach to these characters as actual people.
You think I'm crazy? Yes, I am.
It's something we literally haven't seen in the franchise since like Han and Leia's dynamic in The Empire Strikes Back. For some reason, so much of this franchise is allergic to emotion and so much of it is drowned in stilted, empty space mumbo jumbo. But the way you ground audiences to your story is through the people in it. It doesn't matter how sci-fi or how out there it is. If the characters feel real and make real human choices, the audience will always be on board. You can have a show like this that features a cast of relative nobodies in the overall scope of the Star Wars saga, and you end up feeling more attached to them than most of the characters that have appeared across the mainline films, certainly any of the Disney ones.
I've a constant blur of plates spinning and knives on the floor and needy, panicked faces at the window, of which you are but one of many.
And if there was ever a peak example of that, it would be this show's continued focus on ya boy, Cyril Karn. So even after his arc seemingly concludes back in episode 3, we find ourselves still following this guy even after he gets fired and moves back in with his mom, and you really start to feel for him. He has to go back home and get his mom to get him a new job. He literally lives in the basement of Coruscant. I mean, you want to talk about human characters? This might be the only character in all of Star Wars that is just a random ass loser. He sucks. He's just some guy that's not nearly as smart and capable as he thinks he is, and he's dealing with people and events way beyond him. So you wonder why we're still following this guy through his mommy issues and getting a new job at some random company. Like, clearly he has to come back into the greater story at some point, but how? Well, by meeting his new Gestapo mommy, of course.
You have engaged the curiosity of the ISB.
I'll get more into Cyril and Dedra's relationship later, but their dynamic is such a fun, weird detail in this show. Like, she brings him in for questioning while she's trying to build her case on Luthen's rebel network, and you can just tell there is some strange dynamic in the air. I mean, this is a guy that absolutely grovels and worships at the feet of authority. He literally has toy clone troopers in his room at home, which is such a great small detail, by the way. So when he encounters this absolute Dami Mommy in an Imperial uniform, the man just can't resist, and it leads him into stupidly getting back into a fight he has absolutely no business being in. You see him just stewing and thinking about Cassian all the time and offloading everything that has gone wrong in his life onto him, staring at his hologram and jumping at the chance to maybe see him again and get his revenge. You don't quite see the dominoes of that fall until season 2, but it adds such a nice layer to the show having this unhinged random loser out there, and it continues to show how even someone as small as him can make a serious impact on this conflict. You can be sipping a bowl of cereal at your mom's house one day and the next be flying halfway across the galaxy on an insane mission for redemption. Again, no one in this show is meaningless and no action comes without consequence, and it all eventually comes back to where it all started. So, in classic TV show fashion, all points eventually converge back on Ferrix as everyone races to catch Cassian at his mother's funeral. Luthen and his team want to assassinate him to guarantee he can't give up any information on them to the ISB. Dedra Meero and the ISB want to capture Cassian alive to get that information. Cyril Karn and his Scottish minion want to catch Cassian to get their old lives back and gain redemption. And Cassian himself just wants to attend his mother's funeral and help the friends he left behind on Ferrix. It's a big old mess, but before we get into how all that plays out, I want to highlight Ferrix itself because it's very emblematic of the effort this show put into every aspect of its production, because perhaps most shocking of all about this show, beyond the writing and the performances and any of the other stuff I could gush about for hours, the most shocking thing about it is that the vast majority of the locations in this show are real, tangible sets or on-location shoots. I know this show cost like $18 quadrillion, so, you know, the money had to go somewhere, so perhaps it's not all that shocking, but when you watch these modern franchise films or shows in like Marvel or Star Wars or whatever, you just never see anything this real anymore, and I don't know if that's for lack of effort or inspiration or just it's easier that way, they think they don't have to do it anymore, but for whatever reason, this show does it. Ferrix is a good old-fashioned Hollywood backlot set complete with interiors, full city streets, and clever dressing up of sets to reuse for different shots. They actually went and built all of this. It's like watching an old episode of like Star Trek or something. It's wonderful. And they didn't stop there either. They actually weave that realistic brick and mortar blue-collar vibe into the culture on the planet itself. Unlike past junky Outer Rim starter planets like Jakku, for example, which is just Tatooine 2.0, Ferrix has real thought put into every detail of it. The city is structured in this tight, disorganized fashion where clearly it started out as like a small outpost or something and slowly over time built up as it became more of a hub for trade and the scrapyard became larger. The citizens all have this scrappy, independent feel to them. Everyone in town knows each other and they all have some kind of shady underground operation going on. There's this clever hammer and anvil alarm system that makes the town feel so connected. They have real displays of culture and tradition. The fact that the architecture is very earthy and most buildings are made of brick shows their distance from the more advanced planets like Coruscant, and also shows the reach of the Empire since they still have a presence out there. There's not like stormtroopers walking the street or anything, but the shadow of the Empire is still felt and the people still have to watch out who they talk to and who could be listening. They even have a system in place to get the town on high alert on the rare occasions when the Empire does come snooping. All of this makes Ferrix into a place that feels so alive and so real. There's of course the usual Star Wars markers in there, but above all, it's just a normal small town that is emblematic of how ordinary people live in the Empire. Every planet like Ferrix has some kind of tragic history with the Empire coming to their home and committing some kind of horrific crime or massacre. It's happening everywhere across the galaxy and it's not forgotten by those who endure it. The people are primed to take up arms the minute they're pushed too far, and you can feel it in the air in every scene on Ferrix.
Smells it. North team, sit rep.
North team here. We're on site.
Copy that, North team.
As the Empire grows bolder and tightens their grip, the rebellion only gets stronger, and that's exactly what happens. After Cassian flees Ferrix back in episode 3, the Empire takes direct control of the planet and all of a sudden has a strong presence on the streets. They torture and kill civilians as they see fit, they impose curfews, the veil of peace and order is totally done away with. So just like what Cassian goes through, where the events of Aldhani and Narkina 5 turn him into a full-blown revolutionary, Ferrix has the exact same arc on a planet-wide scale. At first, they were a people whose goal, like most everyone, was just to live their lives in relative peace and hope the Empire doesn't come knocking, but then are made into radicals by the Empire's increased oppression, and from there, all it takes is one push and that transformation is complete. So you, the audience, really understand why the rebellion exists and what they're fighting against. You see the Empire's evil on the smallest scale and realize that is what is happening everywhere. It's also exactly the kind of thing that Luthen wants to happen as well, which does present this very grim reality of how rebellions are built. But we'll get more into that when we talk about Gorman. What it means for Cassian and Ferrix, though, is that the time for running is over and they are all finally ready to take up arms. It is their final step in becoming rebels. So, as the city erupts into chaos after yet another banger monologue in this show, Luthen and his friends get the heck out of Dodge. Dedramiro is almost taken by the mob until our boy Serial comes and saves her. Damn, are they about to kiss? And Cassian saves his friends and sends him off before the Empire can take them. And after all that, our last scene in Season 1 is Cassian finally submitting himself to the cause and becoming a true rebel. If the show ended here and never got a Season 2, it would still be one of the very best pieces of Star Wars media ever. But thankfully, we live in the timeline where we got a second season, and somehow it managed to get even better. So, if Season 1's main focus was fleshing out this era of Star Wars and showing us the state of the Empire, the rebellion, how the rebellion got its start, why the people are fighting back, the sacrifice it takes to be a rebel, how the Empire governs through fear, and just all these big ideas and themes, Season 2 shifts its focus to a much more personal exploration of these characters and how they cope with living the lives that they do. If Season 1 is why we fight, Season 2 is how we fight. I mean, don't get me wrong, all the themes of Season 1 are still present in Season 2 in a big way. We haven't even gotten to Gorman yet, but the highlights of this season to me are all in these small character interactions and seeing how these people's stories finish as we get closer to Rogue One. This is a season where all of these characters get cemented as some of the best in the entire franchise, and this first chunk of episodes is all about that.
This game ends now. You want Cyril in your life, you will think before you speak.
It's not a very plotty arc like the ones back in Season 1. There's no big heist or prison break or a major death coming down the track. It's just a few episodes of us hanging out with these characters, and it's low-key one of the most fun parts of the entire series, especially on rewatch.
What are you doing here? I'm afraid that's a secret.
We fast forward a year later from Season 1 and see where everyone has ended up since then. Cassian has fallen in with Luthen and is running ops for him and Clea, along with the other survivors from Aldhani. Cassian's friends from Ferrix are hiding out on this farming planet trying to keep their heads down, and the ISB has a new scheme cooking on the planet Gorman under the supervision of Director Krennic, who is back and fruitier than ever. Love to see it.
And it turns out, spiders are not the most unique thing in Gorman.
But the real highlights of these episodes are 1, the Mon Mothma family wedding, which features maybe my single favorite sequence in the entire show, and 2, Dedra and Cyril's weird-ass relationship. If you watched Season 1 and thought that these two absolute maniacs could not get more strange, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, because they are an official item in Season 2 and they are in love. Kind of.
Now we're...
Turn out the lights.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
I was very skeptical of this going in, since these aren't the kinds of characters that typically get romance subplots in these kinds of shows, but I must admit, it works really well, and it works to also humanize them to a point where you really feel for them and understand them as people a lot better. Dedra especially kind of needed this for her character to keep being compelling. We only ever saw her at her job in Season 1, and that was great and all, but now that we know who she is, now seeing her in domestic life totally opens up these storytelling possibilities. I mean, just seeing her not in her ISB uniform immediately reminds you that she is indeed a human with feelings, allegedly. Like I mentioned earlier, you get some nice tidbits of her backstory where you find out that she was essentially a Palpatine youth and was brought up to believe in everything the Empire stands for, which makes sense for how emotionally closed off she is. Like, you can credibly argue that she is a sociopath or a psychopath, and I wouldn't say you're wrong necessarily, but from my point of view, she just seems like someone that was never taught how to be human, and you see that come out in her relationship with Cyril, because she clearly does have some level of love or affection for him, but she just has no idea how to express it. All she knows is fine dining and breathing. Everything else is just not in her. The best she can really do is bring Cyril into her work life in a small way, which is all she knows, and that's about as much love as she is capable of expressing. Even the way she talks about domestic life is very clinical and passionless. She handles Cyril's mother the same way she does an interrogation subject. She goes in for the kill and achieves total and complete victory. You might think that is an example of her lack of emotion, but I think it's just the opposite. She has emotional depth in her, but it's just totally stunted and can only be expressed through actions like threatening her boyfriend's mom with the full might of the Empire. It's sweet in a way, if not totally toxic and terrifying.
I will guarantee a level of engagement, but it will be inversely proportional to the volume of anxiety you generate in our lives.
Quite a mouthful.
I'm not done.
And then Cyril, on the other hand, is almost too full of emotion. Unlike Dedra, who was bred to be this perfect Empire administrator, he is on Team Fascist because he is a true believer. His very identity is tied to his self-perceived worth to the Imperial cause. When he's on the case, he's happy and fulfilled, and when he isn't, he may as well be dead. So involving himself with someone like Dedra is like a dream come true for him. He can finally leave his mom's house, get a new mommy, and feel like he's helping the Empire by proxy. Above all, he just wants to matter. But even though they both kind of get something out of this relationship, it doesn't mean that it's a healthy one. These are not people capable of handling anything like that, especially with each other. What they have is less genuine love and more just a need being filled. Cyril needs someone like Dedra in his life to function, and Dedra can only be with someone like Cyril who she has total control over. They are essentially using each other, not in necessarily nefarious ways, though she is also doing that on a different front, but in ways that are clearly not healthy and is bound to blow up at some point, which of course it does. It's all just so fun to watch too. One of the simple ways characters in shows and movies become likable and iconic is from moments like this, where you're just seeing them live their lives and stress about things like having dinner with your boyfriend's mom and wanting to die as your mom drags you in front of your new Gestapo mommy. It's those small moments that endear you to characters no matter how bad they are, and season 2 is full of them, which is also why the wedding is one of my favorite moments of this entire show.
And where are you stationed? I've been training on Stair Guard, but we're all being transferred now. Really? Where's everyone going?
I haven't talked much Mon Mothma so far because there's just so much to get to, but make no mistake, Mon Mothma is one of the very best parts of this show. For Tony Gilroy and crew to take a character that had like 3 lines way back in Return of the Jedi and then was cut from Revenge of the Sith and had up to this point literally no character aside from her oddly quiet line delivery and turn her into one of the best characters in the entire franchise is truly ridiculous. I mean, if the many Bothans died memes did not exist, this is a character that would have less than 0 name recognition. So to not only give her an actual character, but use her as a way of making things like the fucking Senate work in Star Wars is more than I thought was possible for a show like this. Like, one of the best moments in this entire show is Mon Mothma monologuing in the most famously boring, dry location in all of Star Wars, where such hits as Dello Felagits and Padme's attempt at saying the word committee took place, and it's totally compelling.
The loss of an objective reality is perhaps the most dangerous.
Right from her first appearance in season 1, she's a character looking around her shoulder more than almost anyone else, never able to trust anyone, even her own family. She wastes her day away trying to do some marginal good in the Senate to no avail, and keeping up the image that she is just some unimportant, self-righteous politician that poses no real threat. We literally never see her in a scene where she is visibly comfortable. She always has this look of paranoia and fear, and you can tell it takes a great toll on her. She's risking more than almost anyone else in the rebellion, and worst of all, she is totally alone. Cassian has his friends in Bix, Vel has Cinta, Luthen has Clea. All these people have others to lean on and keep them sane, but Mon is more alone than any of them. She doesn't even know if she can trust Luthen. All she has is her loser-ass husband who can't be bothered to care about anything and barely even seems to like her, let alone love her, and her daughter who seems to utterly despise her, seemingly due to her father's influence. And just like Luthen, who gives everything he has to the cause, Mon too sacrifices everything, including essentially selling off her daughter in an arranged marriage just to maintain her cover. It's some pretty ice-cold stuff, and is yet another great example of how non-heroic much of what the rebels in this show do is. The lengths these people have to go to and will go to is not something most people can handle. Hell, she can barely handle it, and you really see that come out at the wedding in these episodes. Juggling her childhood friend that's helping her disguise her financial movements as he's getting less and less reliable, dealing with the shady family she's giving her daughter to, dealing with her own family's usual resentment, and all of it at a very public wedding with Luthen there watching her every move. She officially reaches her breaking point, and it all comes to a head when Luthen, in so many words, tells her that they have to kill her old friend for the sake of all of them.
We'll be vulnerable forever. You need to be protected.
She's drowning under the weight of all of it and has never been more alone, so all she can do is drink, dance, and forget as her world comes crashing down around her. It's fucking incredible. I mean, this is a real line in a Disney Plus Star Wars show.
I'm not sure what you're saying.
How nice for you.
In a sea of iconic moments in this show, this might be the best of all of them. All the emotion mixed with the music playing over it and the implications of what's going to happen. It's everything. Shout out Wat Tambor, the Techno Union is back, baby. Even aside from just Mon Mothma though, the wedding reminded me of like a classic Game of Thrones King's Landing party where you cut from guest to guest and see all their petty squabbles and drama and the clashing of all these insane, chaotic people.
Just two single women surveying the prospects.
They did not need to go all out on this sequence, but goddamn did they. The costumes, the culture, the choreographed dance sequence, it's all just so amazing. I could watch stuff like this forever, and getting it in a Star Wars show, of all things, is a treat I never knew I needed.
Wedding. I love weddings. Drinks all around.
It's great to be in the